Just to update you, for our August meeting is actually our annual picnic, so we'll be hosting that in the Centennial Park. It's at Pavilion 1, which is the main one off of the street. And we'll, of course, they'll bring a covered dish for that event. We all have plentiful amounts of food to eat, and we will be having a program by Steve Faber, the Parks Director, and he'll just be giving us an update on Salem Parks. So we learn a little bit more if you don't know, or just see where the process is or what's going on with Salem Parks. However, tonight, more importantly, our speaker is Susan Weaver, who's the director of the Museum of Ceramics in East Liverpool. A little bit about Susan. Susan earned her Master's of Science in Library Science from Clarion University. She retired from Kent State University at the end of 2015 end of 2015 as the Director of Library Services for the East Liverpool and Salem campuses. She was also full-time faculty in university libraries and held the rank of full professor. She was active in American Library Association and was a consultant for Greek academic libraries. Previously, she was employed at the museum in its early years as an interpreter. In this role, she gave tours, worked on exhibits, programming, cataloging artifacts, and conducting research, and then has more recently obviously been appointed as the director of the museum. However, tonight she presents the story of Lotus Ware, and it's obviously considered to be possibly one of the finest porcelains ever produced in the United States. East Liverpool's own, is it Knowles, Taylor and Knowles?
Yes.
Pottery made it during the 1890s. So at this point, didn't want to go ahead and introduce Susan Weaver as our speaker this evening.
Thank you. So, you should have been a librarian or somebody. You did good research.
Okay.
I've been a little hard to reach recently, so we haven't had much communication. That's my fault. So I'm surprised you found that all out about me. It's kind of scary. Actually, about this time last year, my friend Sarah Vaudry, who was director of the museum, called and asked if I'd come in and fill in because she had a couple people off. And so I went in and ended up, I was working a couple of days a week, and then she quit. So I always tell people I wasn't looking for a job found me. So, but I'm happy to be back there. It's, as you all know, museums are fun places to be. So, how many of you have been to the museum? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, well, hey, that's a pretty good amount of people. If you ever like to have one of your meetings down there, we would welcome you to come down and have a tour and have your meeting there. That would be nice. So this is what we're about at the museum. It's about preserving the pottery heritage. East Liverpool was the pottery capital of the United States at one point in time. And so the museum really depicts the history of the town and the industry because it's really hard to separate the two. And we talk about potteries of the district. So I was thinking on the way up I should have brushed up on Salem china, but I am a bad director. I didn't think of that till the drive up. But we literally have thousands of artifacts, mostly pottery, of course. We have a wonderful archives that is not in very good shape, but we just have hired an archivist who is pretty quickly whipping it into shape. But we just have wonderful things that have been collected in the area. And one of my goals when I started there was to get some programs and some lectures and some activity going on to let people know that we're there. So, well, let me just tell you about a couple. If you're free a week from Saturday, we're having a really fun night. We're calling it Speakeasy, and we're going to show the last run of Pretty Boy Floyd, the documentary that was made in East Liverpool. Kelsey Hedrick, who was kind of the producer, that'll be there for commentary. And we're having mixed drinks of the Prohibition era. So you have to come in the back door, just like a speakeasy. It's $25 a person, or $40 for a couple. So if you're interested, give us a call and sign up. And we're doing trying to do more kids programming, and we too have memberships for people. It's really, kind of a donation, but then they get free admission to the museum. We're funded completely by the Ohio History Society. At one point, now it's the Ohio History Connection. And in 2008, because of state cuts, almost all of us lost about 93% of our funding from OHC. So then the Museum of Ceramics Foundation was formed. Some of our funding from OHC has been restored. They probably give us about 40% of our funding. But as you can imagine, we're pretty heavily dependent on donations and the kindness of our followers. So, recently, a private collector offered to let us display their collection of Lotus Ware, which is just pristine, just a beautiful collection. But the challenge was, the Museum of Ceramics has a permanent collection of Lotus Ware, which fills our whole lobby. We have well over 200 pieces. And so how to do an exhibit and not repeat what's in that lobby, do something a little different. And people in East Liverpool especially all know about Lotus Ware. They know what it is, and they kind of know the basics of it. So I came up with the idea to do, yeah, this is because I'm a librarian at heart, to do an exhibit based kind of on a book. So we had little chapters. I actually brought one to show you, but I don't think you can see it here. I'll set it up on the table later. But what we did was print off little sort of vignettes, little stories about Lotus Ware, not just the basic stuff we already know, but little unusual stories, and put them in an open book inside the case so it looks like a chapter in the book. And we had, of course, a prologue and an acknowledgments at the end. So that's kind of the theme that goes along with this exhibit. Oh, I forgot. I threw actually a photograph of one of the book pages in here. So in all the cases, there's an open book with some information about Lotus Ware. And nearly every chapter is the story of something or other. So, but let me tell you a little bit, just an introduction about Lotus Ware. This is the first. This is a piece of it, of course, here. It was made only for about 4 years. There are contradictory dates here, but as best we can pin it down, it was pretty much 1982, or 1882, I'm sorry, to 1896. So just about 4 years. It is considered the finest bone china ever made in the United States. And yes, when you hear bone china, that does mean there's bone in the clay. They got the bone from slaughterhouses, burned it in the kilns to an ash, and added it into the clay. There were several city ordinances stopping potteries from burning the bone because it smelled so bad. And it is very rare, very collectible today. It's estimated there's between 3,000 and 5,000 pieces remaining. We're not real sure. I'm actually surprised there's as many pieces out there as there are. But then again, as you see it, this is not the kind of thing you let the kids touch. This is the stuff you put up on the mantle and kept hidden. So a lot of it did survive. And it was made by Knowles Taylor and Knowles. This is actually a postcard. Knowles Taylor and Knowles became East Liverpool's largest pottery. Well, we'll talk more about Knowles Taylor and Knowles here in a second. And here's another photograph, well, with a lot of the smoke from the bottle kilns in it too. I like this one because on the right there, you can just barely see it, but there's the American bison, and it says KT&K. Our early potters, when they made yellow ware in Rockingham, hardly ever put a trademark on their ware. They just thought it was too practical, everyday stuff, and actually the American consumer thought what they could get from England was better. So if they did mark their ware, they used a very British-looking trademark, trying to deceive the housewife into thinking it was imported. But about 1876, you know, the centennial, and everybody's very patriotic. This was a very famous one where they have the American bison. Homer Laughlin really came out with the one that sort of changed things. So it shows the American eagle attacking the British lion. So they weren't real subtle in what they were saying about their competition. So this is Isaac Knowles, and he's the founder of Knowles Taylor Knowles. Isaac was a very interesting character. He started out. His parents were from England, so he's one of our few potters that didn't come directly from England. He was born in Pennsylvania, and he came and he was a carpenter and just kind of did odd jobs, including, they said, delivering, some of the things say, delivering ware for James Bennett. And James Bennett had the first commercial pottery in East Liverpool. And he actually buys Bennett's pottery later on. And he starts his own pottery with a partner, Isaac Harvey, in 1854. You know, it's just your usual 1 or 2 bottle kill plants, very small. But by 1870, he has bought out his partner, and he takes in his son-in-law, who is Colonel John Taylor, and his son, who is Homer Knowles, so hence the K, T, and K. And they didn't incorporate till 1891, and they incorporated with a capital of $1 million, but that's $26 million in today's cash. So, and by then the pottery had 29 kilns and was employing 700 people, so it was a pretty big deal. Both of these pictures, well, no, the one on the right is a picture of Isaac Knowles. The one on the left is taken right through the display case, so it may look a little fuzzy. I opened most of the cases and took the ware out to photograph this, but that case is difficult to open. In the back, I'm talking about the slide, or the photograph on the left, that's Isaac in the back, the big portrait. The photograph that's there, and you can't see it too well here, that's a picture of his wife, but on the table beside her is the vase that is beside her on the books. So Isaac was very innovative, very proactive, and so he knew that the tastes were changing in the Victorian era, and so he wanted to make a luxury ware. So they started out making what they called balik, and you know, it was not bone china, but it was a nicer, finer ware. And he, we'll talk about who he helped have him do that in a moment. But he was making that in the plant that they called the American China Works. So let's see what my next slide is. I forget here. Yeah, that's what I thought. But the American China Works burned down in 1889. So, but that was kind of a turning point then. They decided to rebuild right away. They rebuilt within 8 months. It was up and back in production. And that's when they started thinking about making something such as Lotus Ware. Now, the slide you see on the left is different. Again, that's another one I took through the glass of this display case. But on it, it says, of the 9,400 lights of glass in the China Works, this is the only one found whole after the fire, November 18th, 1889, KT and K. So the pottery workers got this and painted this commemorative, what they called lights, we call window panes, and we have that in our collection. And you can see this is a photograph right after the fire. It was really a devastating fire. The fires, though, were very, very common. You've got coal-fired bottle kilns and sheds, packing sheds full of straw. So it was really common to have fires. So this is Joshua Poole. Isaac Knowles brought Joshua Poole over from Staffordshire, England. Now, many Staffordshire potters, most of our potters were from that part of England. Joshua, though, had recently worked at the Balik pottery in Ireland. So, and he was very well trained. His parents owned a pottery. He was managing that Balik pottery at the age of 29. And we were pretty sure, we found some information in his documents that he went to a trade school really there and learned chemistry and algebra and the other things he needed. We are really fortunate in that we have, probably a shoebox full of Joshua Poole's papers, notebooks, and you see some photographs of them there. Unfortunately, unless you're a chemist, they're pretty much unreadable. They're not really diaries. They're more about clay formulas and glaze formulas. And again, you can't see it too well here, but it's the one on the top does say it is his recipe for bone china and his recipe for the glaze for bone china. So there's two people that really, their names are heard of a lot when you talk about Lotus Ware. He's the one that created really the body, the glaze, the clay body and the glazes. He developed all of this. And I actually brought a piece of Lotus Ware, and someone else did too, which is really nice. They brought a little rose bowl up there. I'm going to pass this one around. So, yes, no, don't be afraid. It's okay. So it's a little shell dish. These are pretty common, and we have several of them in our collection. But you can, I hope you can feel it and see that it's really very delicate. It's really quite nice. Isaac Knowles named it Lotus Ware because he thought it was delicate like the lotus blossom. Although most of it was white, they did make it in the celadon green, the lighter green, and the darker green. Those are the two colors you see Lotus Ware come in. The other important person in the design of Lotus Ware was Henry Schmidt. And this is an interesting photograph. You see the photograph of him on the lower left there. The vase he's working on is the one that's in our collection right above it. Now, the one we have above it was decorated by someone else, but it's the same shape. Schmidt was brought over from Germany. He was working in the Meissen factory over there, and he was a very well-known decorator, very well, highly thought of. But the potteries hired William Blake to work with him, because Schmidt either didn't speak English very well or just chose not to. There's a lot of legends about Schmidt that we're going to try to track down how true they were. He was supposed to be rather cantankerous. He would put things over the window so people couldn't watch him. He very secretive about how he did things. And the employees there, the potteries were pretty rough, the people there. And so we've got a guy who's wearing pastel aprons, because he said that's what they were in Germany. So they nicknamed him the fancy worker. But he was extremely talented. We're going to look at some of the typical Henry Schmidt designs. So this is some of the fancy work. He did this really like you would decorate a cake with a cake tube. It's called slip, but it would be like runny icing, and make these little beads, and then they would be painted. He would make these separately, and then apply them to the ware. This is actually the same piece, just turned at a couple different angles there. So, and as I go on, the pictures, all the Lotus Ware that's in this slideshow is from the temporary exhibit that will be up until the end of December. These collectors have over 900 pieces of Lotus Ware, and every piece they own is perfect. They've, over the years, traded off the lesser stuff, and they only collect the very best. So their stuff is just magnificent. The jardiniere you see on the left, I thought after I put these two together, I probably shouldn't. The jardiniere on the left is about 2 feet tall, and the little jewel box at the top is about as big as your fist, so it's very small. And they're sort of out of proportion here.
The biggest and the smallest.
Yes, I think it actually is the biggest and the smallest in our exhibit. So now, don't misunderstand me. There were other decorators in the pottery. Schmidt was known for that applied work, but we have other decorators, Morley and Anderson. There's some other names that keep showing up, and this is the people who did the painting and decorating. These are perfumeurs, and in this one, I don't think they had Coca-Cola back then, but I wanted something to show you the size of these, so I just put it in there and took a photograph, since I'm addicted to this stuff. So, again, just some samples. Each of these shapes has a specific name. I have to admit I don't remember them all. Most of them are, Roman based, very kind of actually foreign sounding. They wanted that European look to it, so it's just some very fancy names for most of the pieces. So these are the cracker jars, and we have these together just to show that the same shape of ware can be decorated in many different ways. The fishnet pattern is a very prominent pattern among the Lotus Ware pieces that you see, and but they did, as I mentioned earlier, they only made Lotus Ware for about 4 years. So why did they quit making it? It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, a number of reasons. First of all, you can imagine it's very time-consuming to create such a thing as this. A lot of handwork. It's just very, very time-consuming in the decorating process. There was a huge loss during the firing process. Probably one of the things that KT&K did wrong was they used the same bottle kilns they used for everything else to fire the Lotus Ware. And so probably, gauging the temperatures, not having that much control on something so fragile. It's estimated about 60% of the ware didn't make it through the firing process. So it's also estimated that a lot of KT&K workers helped themselves and took a lot of it home. So there was a high theft problem with Lotus Ware. So And you know, that mass-produced ware, the dinnerware they made for commercial markets, for hotels, for railroads, was much more profitable than this very time-consuming Lotus Ware. So around 1896, they quit making it. So life after Lotus Ware, what happens to KT&K? Well, they then went back to making the semi-vitreous dinnerware. Well, not went back to, they've never stopped. But they just abandoned it and relied on their mainstay, which was dinnerware for the commercial market. Now, our potteries also made a lot of other things, as you well know, like toiletware was a big part of what they made. The chamber pots, the bedpans, all the pitchers and basin, all those things that went with it. Some of the potteries also made, even the dinnerware potteries would make electrical porcelain, and KT&K is one of them. They had one plant that made the insulators. And so they went back to that more commercial ware and stayed away from the luxury ware. I did forget to tell you, though, that Lotus Ware won a big award at the 1893 Columbian Exposition. So and it really did get a lot of attention. But it's so funny to me. I was going to pass around something else. This is a little souvenir booklet of KT&K. Let me pass it around. I'll pass it this way. It's interesting, and we've tried to look through this and figure out what date this is. It's, I think, around the turn of the century. They do say, I think there's a date in there that says something that happened in like 1893. They never mention Lotus Ware in there. And in several things, I think at the time they didn't know, they didn't understand how we would be devoted to it. You know, they just saw it as something that was losing money. But I don't think they realized how important it would become to collectors later on. But by the time that they quit making Lotus Ware, they have doubled the size of their plant in that 10 years. That was a very, the heyday for the pottery industry, really. It was the 1890s. So they don't need to do something that's not profitable, because they're making lots of money. And I see might have a typo in the next line. That's supposed to be trouble brewing, it says there. By the 1920s, all of our potteries start to struggle and have some challenges to overcome. Imported ware, some of the protective tariffs had been dropped by then, and the Japanese had 60% of the import market, where before that it was probably the British market having a big part of it. But the cheaper Japanese imports really hurt the industry. And they needed to mechanize, but the mechanization was very expensive. So a lot of the potteries struggled to invest the kind of money they needed to stay in business. So in 1929, 8 of the potteries think that if they put their money together and go together, they can, we all think of that teamwork, we can all help each other. And so they formed the American China Ware Corporation. Now, KT&K was the largest one in that, and probably shouldn't have joined, because the other potteries sort of became dependent on KT&K, and KT&K couldn't really carry the weight of the other 7 potteries. So they all dissolved in 1931. By then, though, all the original owners were deceased. Isaac Knowles had died in 1902. John Taylor in 1914. John Taylor was Isaac's son-in-law, and Taylor was a good friend of McKinley's. We have lots of photographs of McKinley at the Taylor home, and McKinley going hunting or fishing and camping with the Taylors and some others. And Homer Knowles, who died in 1842, and he was only, or 1892, he was only 41 when he died. So it was under completely different management by the time it dissolved. So I want to tell you a little bit about what's happened in doing this exhibit. My board of trustees, board of directors, the president is Jackman Vaudry. And the Vaudry family have been not only good friends, but great benefactors. If it wasn't for the Vaudry family, there wouldn't be a museum down there. They have really helped out. In the early years when it was floundering and didn't have enough money to get off the ground, they gave $1 million to get it going, and over the years have been great supporters. Jackman has a very curious mind, and after this exhibit, he and I kept talking about, well, did you know this? Did you hear that? And we started talking especially about all all the myths and legends there are about Lotus Ware. For example, there's a legend that a baby cradle was made. Now, no one has, everyone knows someone who's seen it, but I've never found that someone who's actually seen it. And my guess is it was not, because I can't, it's hard to imagine something that big. But that's one of the legends. There was a time when all the Lotus Ware, you know, our collection came from the Liverpool Historical Society, who used to store it in Carnegie Library in East Liverpool. And at one point in time, some men broke in there and stole it all, and then tried to sell it and got caught. So that's not a legend, that's true, but it's kind of one of those interesting stories about Lotus Ware. So, and then there's the myths about Henry Schmidt, about, you know, how secretive he was and how difficult he was to get along with and those kind of things. So we decided we're going to do a Lotus Ware project. And as I said, we have a wonderful archives, we have all the old newspapers. We're going to do some serious research and do really a comprehensive study with scholarly information. And that doesn't mean we won't include the myths and legends, but we'll let you know which one is a myth and which one is true. We also then want to get folks to let us photograph their collections. We would really like to have a photograph of every piece of Lotus Ware that exists. So that's why I was happy to meet my friends over here, who to say that they have about 80 pieces of Lotus Ware. So we're going to be talking to them. We're also asking people if they have information. One of the things, we probably have more information on Lotus Ware than anybody, but sometimes people have auction catalogs, for example, and it's interesting to us to see what, you know, things went for, what they're asked, how they describe them. So some of our collector friends are providing us with that kind of thing. So that's our big project coming up. And I think that's my last slide there. Yeah, it is. So I can take questions if anybody has anything yes.
I was curious, what price-wise are we talking?
I know, somebody always asks that. You know, actually,
$2?
I think the Lotus Ware is, some of it's cheaper now than it was like in the 1880s, but you all probably know that when eBay came around, things are easier to find, so they're not quite as much. On eBay right now are a couple of the, I don't think I have any pictures of a Columbian bowl. The Columbian bowl, and they're asking $400 for those. So I would say that shell dish is going around, maybe around $100. The tall two-foot jardiniere you saw, several thousand. You know, so it depends on what it is and what shape it's in. And
what did they sell for initially?
Initially? Oh gosh, you know, I don't know. We have their catalogs, but there were no price. There's no prices in that catalog. That's a good question. I'll have to find that out. I don't know. I don't know. So yes.
What year did you say it was, or did you missed it, that they broke in the library and stuff?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure, I think that was in the 70s. Yeah, the 1970s,
After
yeah.
that, they decided it wasn't a good idea to have them in the library?
Well, yes, that and the fact that the collection had outgrown the upstairs of the library. And of course, you know, it wasn't open all the time, it wasn't displayed well, and so the state of Ohio bought the post office, and then the move was on to get a museum there. So, yeah, a little bit of all that. Yes.
How long would it take to do a piece like that?
Well, there's several different processes to it. So, a lot of this is it would be made in molds, and then so it has to set up. Then it would have to be fired, and then it would have to go back to be decorated. The decorators, I would say on some of these pieces, you know, the skilled decorator like Schmidt, but probably an hour for one piece in decorating on some of those really elaborate ones. So it's understandable why it was so expensive, or why it's expensive to make.
So there's not just one piece, one of one. It's maybe you need 10 of them.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Also, you said that Mr. Knowles,
Yes.
Okay, that he purchased it for $1 million, and he was a carpenter.
No, that's what it was worth. It was worth $1 million when he incorporated.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, I don't know what he bought it for to start with, because he bought an old pottery, but he bought land. But I will tell you, this guy, he was a very interesting guy. He had 8 children. He has a lot of patents. He improved the jigger that it's used to shape the ware. And So, and we have a lot of his papers too, and we have a lot of deeds where he sold property. So he must have bought up everything in town because he was always selling property. So I think he was quite the entrepreneur. Yeah.
Where was the pottery?
It was pretty much right smack in town. If you're familiar with East Liverpool, where the dollar store, Rite Aid, all of that is, actually it's just right up from the museum. And some of the buildings are still there being used for something else. Goodyear Tire used to be there. There's if you all know what street, that would be Walnut Street. So.
Susan, my mother was a descendant of Isaac.
Oh,
yes.
He had 8 children, so.
Yeah. Well, his sister was actually my family. Do you have information there at the museum that is like things that I could use in genealogy research?
Possibly.
Like employee records. I know 2 of my relatives worked there. My grandfather, my great-grandfather.
Yes.
My grandfather worked for Charles Harrison.
Okay.
And I have sample plates.
We do. We have a lot of stuff. We have this new archivist. She just fresh out of library school, and she brought me the other day a ledger that is board meetings from KT&K that she found. We have a tremendous amount. I will mention that to her, and she can take a look for you. I just know we have a lot of stuff. I don't know if we have something of use to you, but I'm
going to come in sometime.
Yeah, I have a card here too. I have cards I'll pass out to you if anybody's interested.
Okay.
Yeah, come in.
Yes.
We just moved the archives. This is why nobody could reach me for 2 weeks. My office got moved, and we've got carpeting, and I can't find anything at the moment. Give us a week or so, and we should be back in shape. Yes.
I have another question. In regards to, you showed a picture of a perfume bottle.
The perfume ewer.
I'm sorry, you called it
a ewer. It's E-W-E-R.
And you put the perfume in that, and was there a lid to?
It's hollow and it's open work, so you must have set a bottle down inside that. I've wondered about that myself because it's open. If you pour something, it's going to run right out the sides. Yeah. So it must have been a cover for a bottle. Is there anything
a certain kind of perfume?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Manufactured, which would be interesting to know.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. Good questions.
Can you define ceramic?
I got asked that just today. It's just really, we just say it as it's the same as pottery. A ceramic just kind of sounds a little better, I think.
Must be a different, I don't know if you know her, Eddie Murphy, who lives down in Wellsville.
Okay.
She had a friend that came into the area and went there to see it, and she was disappointed because it wasn't ceramic, in her mind.
Yeah, I think people tend to think of ceramic as being more of china and pottery being more the semi-vitreous heavyware. I don't know if that's true, but that's sort of the nuance I have in my head about the difference.
More delicate types.
Yeah, I think so too.
Why did they put bone in it?
Whiteware clay is a combination of different ingredients, and so that's why they used it in China then. Now they don't use it in China, but back then that's what they used, and I don't really know why.
The color, the whiteness.
Maybe. Mm-hmm. These Liverpool potters made yellowware to start with because that's the clay we had. Whiteware clay had to be imported, and whiteware clay is a combination of ingredients. It's not just one. Things like feldspar. I don't know much about that stuff. So we got 2 up here. Go ahead.
The books I brought have the values.
Oh, good. Oh, for now or back then?
Well, the books were published.
Okay.
So I can't tell you.
Yeah, it's still more recent though.
The rose bowl that I have, I paid $200.
Did you? Okay. And that seems ballpark to me.
I have a few pieces. We paid $1,500.
Okay.
But I haven't bought any for probably 10 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it's sold at auction, so it's just how bad you want it, And it's wonderful. She brought the 3 books that are really out there on Lotus Ware. That's it. Those are the 3 that are out there. So, yes.
Also, you mentioned about the phone. Would it be like a certain kind of animal? Or?
You know that? We don't know. I got asked that the other day, too. I'm not sure. I just heard they got them from slaughterhouses. That's all I know. So I don't know if they ever differentiated between different kinds or not. It's another good question. So, well, I hope all of you will kind of pay attention to the Museum of Ceramics as we start doing things. We're trying to, make it a lively and fun place to be. We have a speakeasy coming up. We do have a local musician series, which we just, have music in the museum. And in October, we're going to do a night at the museum. If those of you who've been there, we have the mannequins downstairs. We're going to insert some live people in those and that's going to be a family night, so for the kids, and I think it'll be kind of fun. We're doing it at the end of October. It seems a little Halloweenish, so. But we got lots of things coming up in November. And I really hope I could talk to someone from here doing this, because we got this idea, and then it's kind of new. I don't know if anybody will do it. We're hoping. We're having a contest. Have you heard of the term tablescaping? Yeah, well, I hadn't either, so until I got back in the museum world. But people who collect just make these beautiful table settings, and they call it tablescaping. So we're going to have a tablescaping contest for people we're going to give them a card table and let them bring, but it has to be locally made, Salem and China account, and we're going to have a contest to see which is the most beautiful tablescape.
They used to do that here at the Salem Library.
Okay.
And they had a great big oak table, and it had a glass top. It was about yay big. And different people would bring their hobbies, their collections, and put it under glass and shelf.
Yeah.
Always loved looking at it.
Yes. Well, so we're hoping that'll go. And then we did a Mardi Gras last year as a fundraiser. I think that's going to be an annual event, at least until people get tired of it. That'll be the end of March. It's $75 a person, but it's our big fundraiser of the year, and we had a blast last year. Lincoln Park Performing Arts in Midland. I don't know if any of you ever go up there for their performances. Those kids are amazingly talented. They were the jugglers, the singers, the jazz band for us. Local bakery did beignets. We passed out masks, and it was really a fun night. It's sort of our kickoff to reopen. So, we are open Tuesday through Saturday, 9:30 to 3:30. This hasn't quite been decided. Last year, the board wanted to close January, February, and March, and we tried staying open on weekends. Instead, just weekends. That went okay. I'm not sure yet if we're going to be open or closed during those months, but you can always call. And I'm going to pass my cards. Oh, here, they are. What is it? And the museum number's on here as well as my cell phone, if you need to reach me. Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, I see it. Thanks. So, well, thank you for having me, and you're a great audience. You're a lot of good things.
All right, thank you again for coming out. We certainly appreciate it. Make sure everybody takes a visit down to the Museum of Ceramics, and feel free to socialize and enjoy some dessert and cookies here.
Our hosts this evening are David Hughes and Kathy Hale, and with now I'm the cook and bottle washer. So please stay, join us, look at the books if you'd like. And BJ?
For the picnic, the table service will be
provided. Okay, yeah. Next month is our picnic meeting. And Kevin already told you it's at the Centennial Park at the Stone Pavilion number 1. We will be providing the plates and napkins and silverware, as well as the hot dogs and fixings. And we just ask that you bring a covered dish. We're going to start early at 6 to give people a chance to eat and socialize. And then we will have a program at 7 on the Salem Arts. So please come. And please come to the party, the big party. We're 70 now. We don't look 70, do we? And there are invitations on the counter. Thank you.